This episode is sponsored by the word plethora. Why say just any old word when you can use the word that means a lot? Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm single and almost all of my friends are married, but that hasn't stopped me from being in their lives. In this podcast, I will talk with these friends and try to prove that, though friendships between married and single people might seem intimidating at first, it's really not that hard. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. I have absolutely no vocational qualifications whatsoever. I might be coming at it with a Christian worldview, but I don't work in ministry and I'm not a counselor. What I do have to offer is experience. Over a third of my life spent being what my friends have dubbed a professional third wheel. Cool. Well, welcome to the Professional Third Wheel podcast. I figured we would start off with two of my friends that I've third wheeled with the longest, Ryan and Lauren. How are y'all doing?
Tired, actually.
It's pretty late.
It's been a long day.
But excited to sit down and talk with you about something that's really near and dear to your heart, and we've really respected you for doing with us for years.
Don't talk me up too much. This is the first episode.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this podcast is stuff that I kind of honed with you guys, kind of lessons that I learned with you guys that I took into other relationships that I had. So it's pretty cool to start off with you. And a lot of this stuff, I think you're going to hear it. If you listen through the whole podcast, you'll probably hear a lot of this stuff come up over and over again. So hopefully that will be good to hear. But to start off, though, I would like to know how long y'all have been married.
7 years. 8 years in May?
8 years this coming May.
Oh, oops. 8 years in May.
Some of you are technically both right. It's May.
Yep.
That's awesome. And you have one daughter. How old is she?
She's 3.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
3.5.
3.5.
It's been a ride.
It's a big half too. She's definitely very mature for a 3-year-old. Yeah. That's awesome. So I actually, out of the two of you, I met Lauren first. Would you like to maybe talk about that a little bit?
For sure. Yeah. So you and I met in college, and I was a freshman. You were a sophomore in college. We were part of the same Bible study, and we would go on spring breaks as a Bible study, and we would do a lot of kind of extracurricular stuff as well. So we got to know each other pretty well over the course of those 4 years.
Yeah. And y'all were dating long distance at the time. So like you also kind of had this like added protection of like, I have a boyfriend out there somewhere in the ether.
It's
and
so
like,
true.
He may come. So watch yourself.
I definitely took advantage of the fact that I had protection and I had a boyfriend for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe not with you, but with some others, I think.
Well, it was super great though, because it took a lot of pressure off of me and allowed us just to be friends, right? Like there was never any like, I had to think about that kind of stuff. And just like, oh, I can just actually talk to this person as a person and not just see her as a potential like love interest or something or worry about that being what I am. So
yeah, and I made a lot of guy friends that way. There was a safety, you know.
Yeah, and Lauren lived in the at one point the bottom floor of the same building that me and 4 of my dudes that I lived with did. So you would come up sometimes and do homework with us and watch stuff. And
yeah, or watch you play video games.
A lot, yeah. And so I think that's probably the time that we got really close was when you were able to do that. And, you know, you just come over and hang out and then go down and go to bed or whatever. And then Ryan, when he came down, since we were upstairs, he would come crash on our couch after they hung out all day. And so that's kind of how we got to know each other. And he would get in at like, I don't know, 11 or 12 o'clock, maybe later from hanging out with Lauren. And then we would just sit there and talk for like an hour or two. And then he would go to bed and we'd get up in the morning and there'd just be a neatly folded pile of blankets on the couch and a pillow and he would be gone. And that would be the last time we see him until the next month or whenever. But we didn't get to spend a ton of time together during that because you were going to college in Mississippi.
Yeah, not a ton of time. And it's interesting how close I was able to get with you and those roommates through just a couple hours in the early morning at the end of a long day. But it was a good time and just an interesting way to develop a friendship from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and it was nice to have you in our place because I feel like that was kind of our way of being like, hey, like we're taking care of Lauren when you're not here. Like you don't have to worry, you know, kind of thing. And like, I don't know, trying to earn some trust from you before, because I mean, good grief, dating somebody long distance and them being surrounded by dudes all the time. I mean,
it's so easy. Dating long distance is so easy. I highly recommend it for anyone listening.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and for the record, like y'all been married for 7 years, but how long have you dated? Because you dated long distance for a long time.
Right.
So yeah, we just passed 13 years together and 4.5 years of it was long distance.
Yeah. That's a
Definitely do
rough
not
road.
recommend to anyone.
But boy, y'all were able to talk after all that. And so
Yeah, well, and that's
got.
one of the benefits of long distance. I was joking earlier, but genuinely one of the benefits of long distance is that you just talk. You can't do anything else, really. You can't go on dates. You can't even be physically connected. You have to just talk out all of your issues and get to know the person. And it really was quite beautiful. There's a reason we continued to date each other for 13 years. And I say continue because, marriage is dating ultimately.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And back then there was no group watch feature on
you could watch movies
Netflix or
together,
Disney
yeah.
Plus.
But
And so,
we did find ways around that, though.
yes, we would. Yeah.
We would start the show at the same
Synchronization
time.
countdown, and you'd have to deal for the delay of
Yeah.
the conversation over the
Oh my
phone, and
gosh.
lots of creative problem solving.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
super funny. Well, the way that our friendship evolved from there is pretty cool because obviously, Ryan did move to Nashville eventually. We kind of joked that he married into the friend group because we kind of had a big friend group back then and he just hopped right in and that was it. The engagement period is fuzzy because we weren't super close then. It was around that time or maybe a little after that we got closer. I feel like actually hanging out, weekly, bi-weekly. And I remember when you first moved here, you lived pretty far. I think you lived in Hendersonville, so like an hour out from us here. So it wasn't super easy for anybody. I mean, Lauren made the track and you made it back, but like everybody else is kind of like, well, we'll see Ryan when he moves into the city.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the job I had at the time as well meant that the only times I could drive into town was at peak traffic.
Right. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So it was just
Terrible
miserable.
route. Yeah. But I think ultimately what did it when you did move into town and we could see each other more in terms of us being close was that a lot of our college friends started to move away at once.
Right.
And we were just all very sad and just, I guess, pressed closer together and developed a lot closer of a
the ones
relationship.
who are left, for sure.
Me and Lauren have always had a lot in common. We're both, kind of in creative fields. And so we always had things to talk about in college. With Ryan, we definitely have a lot in common, but at first glance, it wasn't as obvious, I feel like. And so definitely wanted to prioritize getting to know Ryan early on because, most of the time we hung out, it was the three of us. And I worried sometimes that it might be one-sided between me and Lauren. And so, me and Ryan started hanging out kind of on our own when Lauren was busy or, there was just a night where she's like, I don't really feel like doing a whole lot. And we were like, okay, we'll go do something or whatever. And I think that was a really important thing that I didn't realize how important it was until much later on that we did that. And we still do that sometimes when it just doesn't work out for all the three of us to hang out. We'll still go out and do something. We just have the daughter with us now, which is fun in its own way. But what kind of stuff do we do when we do hang out without Lauren?
Yeah, it really is taking advantage of just the interests that we share that
Right.
Lauren maybe doesn't. So
Right.
there might be particular restaurants or movie or show choices that we will take advantage of because Lauren may not have those tastes.
Right.
And those exist between you and Lauren as well.
Oh, for sure.
Where I don't have those tastes. And
Yeah.
there are every once in a while opportunities for that as well. So
I mean, yeah, there's times where you go out of town that we'll still get together and, watch a Harry Potter movie or just whatever it is. And
True. I just feel like there's more Star Wars content than there is Harry Potter at
sadly,
this point.
yes. But yeah, I think that's a pretty big advantage to me being friends with you first as opposite gender people because it's not so hard for me to be like, to your husband, hey, let's go get a beer, as opposed to, if I was friends with him first, I can't go ask you to go get a beer without him. That's a little less, it's more awkward.
Right.
And so it's weird. A lot of people think it's more awkward to be friends with, the opposite gender person first. But if you can make it into being a third wheel in their marriage, it's actually a lot easier in a lot of ways. If the trust is there and you put the work in to establish that, I think it can be a really cool thing.
I'll chime in on that too to
Yeah.
just say that the trust is really important and it builds over time. I had 3+ years before Lauren and I were married of you being her friend in a context where I got to see and learn what your character was. And, that's continued over, the subsequent 7.5 years.
Right. Yeah. And I do want to hit on that later, but for sure, if you're a single person, don't expect that right up front. You do have to earn that. That's something you do have to be very careful and intentional and communicate. And, it's not going to look the same for everybody. Not everybody has the same boundaries we do. That's a different person by person thing. But so here's my first big soapbox, and I will get on and off of it constantly throughout all of this. when my best friend in Oklahoma got married, or I guess engaged, I realized, because he lives 8 hours away, that I actually had really never met his future wife. And so I very much made a point to find a week that worked for us to hang out. I went down there. He worked during the day, so I was kind of just floating around. So like if she wasn't working and had errands to run, I would just go with her to run those errands, because I was just like, at the end of the day, if I don't know his spouse by the time he gets married and I walk into that house, I'm an outsider in some ways that I wouldn't be if I knew them both. It's the difference between, her saying, hey, your friend Kevin is here. Have fun. I guess I'm going to go take a bath or go out with the girls or something, versus, hey, Kevin's here. What are we doing tonight? And the way I've always put this is I feel like I'm dividing the house I enter into if I'm not friends with both people. But the more I think about it, I'm just like, there's so many reasons to do this that are very obvious. Like, for one, like my best friend has become one flesh with a person. And if I don't know that person, calling him my best friend feels kind of phony at that point. So that's one thing that I've thought about. And then the other is, what is it saying to my best friend if he marries somebody and I don't take the time to get to know them at all? Like, the most important person in your life, and I'm your best friend and I don't care. Like,
Right.
that's not really being a good friend, I think. And the last one's just practical. It's hard enough to make friends these days. And I have my closest friend who I have all these things in common with, who has married somebody. I probably have something in common with them, but it's a silver platter. Like, here you go. Here's a friend curated.
That's a huge thing of mine. The things in common, it's In a Severe Mercy, which is a book that was written by a few of C.S. Lewis's friends. They talk about how if you love someone and they love a thing, then there is something in that thing for you to then love.
Yes.
And it may take you trying a couple times. It may take some work, some time, but there is always something that you can find to love about something or someone if you love the person that loves it,
Yes. And it's amazing how you find that you do start to find something about that interesting, especially if you marry the person, but
Right.
even just as a friend. But yeah, I just think that, there's just so many benefits to being friends with both people in your own way and on an equal level to some degree, because if I come in here, and this is why I hit up Ryan so quickly. So I'm like, if I come in here and all me and Lauren do is talk about stuff that we know, and Ryan feels like an outsider the whole time, and that doesn't exactly make him excited when I come over. At the same time, like, that takes effort on Ryan's part too. Like, he had to want to get to know me. If he didn't want to get to know me, there's only so much I can do, and it probably just wouldn't have worked. So, everybody's responsible for this, I guess, is the point. It's not all on the single person or all on the married people, but doing that early as possible is very helpful, because I don't think we would have been as close as we were for as long as we were if we didn't have the flexibility of all being friends in our own way, I guess, together or separate.
It would be very, very difficult to find time for solo hangouts without husband and child. That time as you get older and you have kids or get married or you have multiple kids and then they have a bunch of stuff going on, that time just gets smaller and smaller. And of course it comes back eventually, but it is difficult to find the time. And so the fact that, Kevin, you have been so diligent in trying to find an avenue for the three of us to be friends has been invaluable. You've stayed in our lives because of that, because of that diligence.
I think it's also like a huge comfort and honestly a really good thing for our friendship. When I got to know Ryan, like, I felt our friendship get stronger, mine and yours individual friendship, because one, I just showed you I do care about the person you care about the most a lot. And then you didn't have to worry about us being together and Ryan being left out, or, us over, like, 'cause I'd worry about that too, but you also would worry about it a lot more than I would, because you're presenting this person to this other person. And one of the pastors at my church, Sam Alberry, he was once told by one of his friend's wives that her husband is a better husband because he is his friend. And I'm like, boy, that's the compliment every third wheel should be pursuing, right? Like, there is no higher thing to strive for. So, but anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about just right off the bat that's pretty principled is actually, y'all are the first people to do this with me, was the standing plans.
Plans where we stand.
Yes. Also,
We
nobody
just-
sits.
the
The
whole
entire
night.
time. Standing desks, but on a whole nother level.
It's good for your upper back. But yeah, if you were to define standing plans, how would you define it?
Sure. I would say that standing plans are a regular spot on the calendar where the assumption is we're going to be getting together at this time. Maybe the details aren't all worked out. Maybe sometimes it doesn't happen and it gets called off. But the expectation is, yes, they'll be here unless we hear something.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. I like that you said spot on the calendar because I almost would have said weekly or monthly, but it really can be whenever. It could be biannually. I don't know, but like that's a lot of remembering to do. But for us, it's weekly for the most part. And
on March 2nd and June 1st.
every year. But yeah, and what I've just found about this, it's not for everybody because it is a commitment. But what I found is that it's way easier to say, this is our day. Let's not talk about it unless it's not going to happen or unless we need to work some details out, as opposed to every week. I want to see you every week, but we have to plan it at the beginning of every week. Like it's not feasible with how much y'all have to do. And, you have to be together to think about that, to even figure out what your schedule looks like. And it's just, there's a lot more misses and there's a lot less hanging out when you have to plan on the go like that. I feel like if you really want to see each other that often, it's way harder to do without just being like, this is our day. And then you can safeguard it from other things, right? Like that's what I found is there's a lot of things that people ask me to do on Saturday when I'm like, nah, it's my night with Ryan and Lauren. So I think that's very useful in that way. This is all just practical stuff. It's not a rule or anything, but it's been really good for us.
And it can be anything. Like you're saying, it can be a night where you just have dinner, put the kid to bed, kids, whatever, and then you watch a show.
Yeah.
Or which is, probably most days for most of us.
Yeah.
But it can also be, hey, I need to literally tonight, you went to the storage unit with Ryan to drop off a load of boxes.
Right.
So it can be whatever needs to happen. And that's part of inviting you into our family and how we run. And yeah, it usually at like 3 p.m., we'll get a text from you about, hey, have you thought about dinner? And sometimes it's stuff that I cook, or sometimes it's something that you'll go out and bring in for us, which, our daughter is always so happy that Uncle Kevin brings Chick-fil-A over. Yeah. And it is always Chick-fil-A.
Right.
So you hold it very loosely and you assimilate into the family almost as if you were living here with us anyway,
right.
And I think a big thing is just rolling into whatever plans are going on, right? If something needs to get done and the life of this family and this house that you're walking into sort of demands some logistical thing, being there and ready for that. And then also knowing that they can not happen, right? And a random canceling of those standing plans for a given week or a given month or whatever it is just sometimes what has to happen.
Yeah. When I think having that every week makes the canceled weeks a lot, like in some ways more of a blow, and in a lot of ways way less of a blow. 'Cause you're like, well, I'll just see him again next week, but like, it also is like, that was a set point on my week. I tell time by one of that as a day.
Right.
And so you do feel it, but like, it just makes you more thankful that it's a thing when you get back together. And it's meant a lot to me. And like, again, it's a commitment. So it means a lot that your friends are willing to do that. I mean, I feel very loved that you are willing to make that space for me to enter in. And you are married, pretty settled, you have a kid, you kind of have to be here. I have some friends who come to me and we just go do random things every week. It doesn't have to necessarily be that, but you have to kind of read the room, I guess. Like, what can your friends do? What are their limitations? And for us, that's bedtime with kiddo, and it works just fine. Yep. It's a great structure.
Bedtime or lack thereof, am I right?
Right. But I will say, if you ever do, because I mean, it's not like you're not shorted as a friend if you don't have standing plans with somebody. Like, this is just something that's really allowed us to see each other. Like, it's not right or wrong. It doesn't make our friendship better or worse than anybody else. It's just a way that we want to see each other. It's worked out. It's been great. If you do end up with standing plans, that's great. Don't hold it too tightly, because seasons of life change, people change, your schedule may change. Like, you might not always be able to hang out on that night or, every week at all. I don't know, but I'm having to deal with a lot of that right now. Actually, I used to hang out with about 4 married couples a week. They all had their night, and right now we're down to 2, and everything else is kind of just in flux because of some situations. And
that is insane.
It is.
More than half of your week was spent with married couples. Yeah.
So if anyone's worried about Kevin being qualified to talk about being a third wheel, he has the experience.
I did it. Well, I work from home, and so that's kind of the carrot at the end of the day is I go see people. I'm introverted during the day. I want to see people at night. But yeah, I mean, I'm having to arrange my life a lot right now, and I've realized I've been pretty spoiled having all that just set on the calendar, and I have to really work at it again. So just see how that works for you, if that's even a possibility. Again, everybody's different. Everybody has different capabilities and comfort levels with that kind of stuff, I guess. But But us getting to where we are now, definitely, it did take a bit of work. I remember because the standing plans were not the first thing we did. We did try to do we want to hang out every week. Let's try to make that work kind of thing. And it kind of, especially around the time kiddo was born, it definitely got kind of loose and undefined for a while there. There were weeks where I would shoot a text message and be like, hey, we're hanging out this week, right? And like, yeah. And then the day would come and like, I'd get a text like the day before, be like, actually, we're not able to do that this day. So, okay, well, what about this day? Like, okay, let's try for that. And so it just ended up being kind of a thing where it's like, okay, I feel like we've missed this like 3 or 4 weeks in a row now. And like, we probably need to talk about it. So It's like one of like the 3 most difficult texts I've ever sent in my life. I like sat there for like 2 hours reading over to be like, is this too harsh? Like, I just need to tell them that I don't really feel like this is working.
What are
the
other 2, Kevin? Tell.
But so that was not an easy thing. But I think that text message really did allow us to kind of get into the schedule that we're in now. That's worked really well.
Right. Well, it was when we were younger and sans kiddo, it was pretty easy to kind of get that regular time together. We were hanging out as a friend group. We were hanging out at lunch after church or something like that. We had these rhythms, and they would often include you or others, or we were getting that time naturally. But again, as life gets busier, it just gets so much harder, and so many things changed for us when we had our kid, and it was not an easy transition for us. So for everybody out there who's not having an easy transition when you have a kid, you're not alone. We thought we were dying. We weren't. We were being a little dramatic about it, but it was really, really hard. And so a lot of people started to fall through the cracks, a lot of relationships. And we got so busy that we forgot about consistently being with people and not being flaky. And you sent us that text on a night where we were already so stressed and so overloaded with our schedules that it was genuinely a wake-up call that we needed in the rest of our life too. So yeah, you never know when you say a difficult thing to someone if you could be an instrument of change in the rest of their life as well. So it wasn't just our relationship that changed, but when you sent that text and you said, this is hurting me, essentially, the fact that you've said we will hang out once a week and haven't followed through on that, we immediately kind of recognized that was hurtful. And we sat down that night to schedule out our lives. We wrote down everything we were doing, and we wrote down everything that was necessary in 2 different columns. And the right column was so short, and the left column was very, very long. And so we reprioritized, and you were one of the things that we reprioritized, and that was good to do that. And we came up with standing plans, and it's been
2 years,
2 full years,
Yeah.
maybe plus a bit.
In this form, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, you never know how that is going to strike people. Like, you can be as gentle as you possibly can be, and that could absolutely offend your friends, or like they could literally be like, all right, we created the left column and the right column, and like, sorry, I do value your friendship, but we just can't fit you into the column where we see you every week. And like, that's totally fine. If you'd said that, we would have tried for every couple of weeks or every month or something like that.
Because it truly is a lot to ask.
Sure.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those kind of things where like y'all had said it was something that you wanted to do. And if you hadn't said that, I would not have written that text the same way. And so it's more of a like, hey, like, I feel like we said one thing and we're doing a different thing. Can we talk about that more so than just like, hey, you're not giving me your weeks, or whatever. And so it's because that's what I was afraid it would come across as just needy and insecure or something. But yeah, I want to get back to kind of how we're hanging out now. We've hit on it a little bit, but I think so much of this podcast is just going to be us talking about our individual situations, what a normal night looks like for us. Because like you said, there's nothing sexy about it. It's very much just me walking into whatever's going on and us just going alongside each other in that.
What would be sexy?
I don't really know.
What situation would we
maybe taking me to dinner and a movie every night? I don't know.
Just like I have candlelit home cooked dinners.
I mean, most nights it is dinner and a show.
That's true. So it's kind of that.
Technically.
Yeah.
Is that what we consider sexy now?
I don't even know.
Dinner and a show.
Sure. Okay.
I'm not hard to please, but But yeah, so I think there's a benefit in kind of hearing how we do it because it is so ordinary. And the goal of this podcast is to be like, we're not anything special. We're just ordinary people doing life. And so I hope that a lot of other ordinary people out there will hear this and be like, well, my life doesn't look exactly like that. But that's encouraging because there's nothing special or necessarily hard about that. So you can do it as well. But
And to say something there too, these are things that we fell into.
yeah.
Right? The just natural flow of life and the experience of being friends for, you and Lauren for over a decade and just taking time. And so we've now found through just practical wisdom, this thing that works out.
And intentionality. I mean, I think that's so much of it. It's just really looking at things and being like, I want to see this person all the time. How can I make that happen in a way that's the least stressful for all of us? We mentioned I mostly come to their house because they have a kiddo and she needs to go to sleep when she needs to go to sleep. And the thing about your house that's not the same with all of my friends' houses is I had a house like this with my best friend growing up. I'd go to it after high school where I feel like I can just walk in, go to the fridge, pour myself a glass of water and sit on the couch and it's totally fine. And I don't have that with everybody, but you've very much made it clear to me very early on that that's the way you wanted it to be for me. And that's really awesome. And kind of hits on the Rosaria Butterfields. The gospel comes with a house key idea. I actually do have a key to your house in the digital form of
That's
a code.
true. Yeah.
And you have a key to my house, in case I ever drop
In
dead.
the physical form of key.
Yes. Somebody needs to come find me at some point. But that's kind of what I walk into. But a typical night for us, a million forms of the same thing. I feel like we do have dinner. A lot of times Lauren cooks, as she said, or I will bring Chick-fil-A or something inferior to that. And I will say, this is something that took me a long time to learn. It hasn't really been something with you guys, but I think a lot of single people are afraid to initiate hangouts with couples at their house sometimes because it feels like an intrusion. But I've kind of found that if you just offer to bring food, most of the time they won't even let you, first of all. But second of all, like you can kind of invite yourself over because you're like, all I'm doing is making your life easier by coming
For
in.
sure.
Whether I stayed the whole night or just for dinner, like I'm alleviating you of something here.
I mean, normalize bringing food to somebody else's house, guys. Not in like a weird Southern hospitality, I'm bringing a casserole over way, but in a, hey, you've got 5 kids. Can I bring you spaghetti and meatballs so that you don't have to cook one night and we all can enjoy a lovely meal together?
Yeah.
Ryan and I would do that a lot, even after we had our daughter.
But a lot before when it was just us
before.
married, and bring paper products to eat
Oh,
on
yes.
too. So then there's no dishes.
It's such a good idea. And again, you do have to push a little bit because people are like, what? No, like we'll cook
Especially
you
if they
dinner.
have that many
You're
kids.
a guest in our house,
Yeah,
yada,
yeah.
yada. And we're like, well, sure, but I have more time than you. So why don't I do this for you?
Yeah.
You know?
And to be fair, some people may prefer that you don't bring home cooked stuff over. That can,
That's true. Yeah.
be a thing
never
that
know.
can be odd for some people. So just try different stuff out.
Yeah. Well, another thing with us is we've never really kept track of money too much, like within reason. Like if I'm buying you like a 4-course dinner or something at some place, you'd be like, that's a lot of money. Let us pay you back for that. But
Yeah.
generally, because so many of the nights I bring things are the nights you cook, like it kind of evens out. It's just not. And I mean, I have friends who we'd absolutely do Venmo each other for every coffee we buy each other. It's whatever your friendship looks like. But I think a lot of times that's one of the things people worry about when people bring stuff to them is like, man, how much do they spend to like bring this to us or whatever? If I bring food, generally I'm here at dinner time because when I walk in the door, kiddo is usually starved and ready to sit down and eat.
Absolutely.
But if you cook, I will generally come earlier to spend some time with kiddo because it's a great time to do it. And it's also a time where it's more helpful for me to distract her because she likes to be on top of you guys.
so helpful.
So that's
so much nicer.
I think that's a cool thing that can be applied across many families. And then, we spend dinner catching up. That's kind of light catch-up time for us because sometimes kiddo wants to talk, and she went through a phase for a while where she would just like straight up go, I want to talk now. And we'd
Yes.
be like, what do you have to say? So
This bread is really good.
Yeah. Excellent impression.
And P.S. there will be time after bedtime to talk to your friends.
yeah, and y'all are very good about when she talks. Like you're like, hey, let us finish the story and then we'll listen to you. And then we listen to her and she gets way more attention than any one of us gets when
Yes.
she talks. So yeah, it's very honoring to her. And so yeah, dinner's over. We play with kiddo usually for another half hour or so. And then the bedtime routine starts. This is a period of time that I had to find my place in when it was all very new, because there is a period of time, if you stay after dinner, and you don't always stay after dinner when you hang out with people with kids. Sometimes they're like, hey, bedtime is a rodeo. We probably just going to let you go. But if you stay for the circus, I guess, and you're on the outside of it all and you're kind of just sitting around, like, convey that you're okay with just chilling for a while. I mean, everybody's got something to do on their phone or whatever while kid goes to bed, but I was always not super comfortable just chilling. I wanted to be useful somehow during that period of time. And I can't be there for bath time, really can't be there for much of bedtime because it involves getting dressed. And, there's a period of time where we don't want anybody else in the room because we're trying to calm down. And so eventually I was just like, well, there's a sink full of dishes over there. Probably means Lauren cooked a meal for me. It was a free meal. So the least I can do is just put the dishes in the dishwasher while they're doing that. And, not purely selfless, because when you come out, Ryan doesn't have to do the dishes before we hang out. So like I get to hang out with you quicker, And
on my bad days, I look forward to the fact that I won't have to do all of the dishes in the evening.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something,
Your other ministry, Kevin, refilling the Brita.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Or the trash, too.
Saint.
Like, again, these are simple things you can do.
Praise Aslan. I mean,
things.
come on.
Yeah. Again, like that's just, I mean, it's a very small thing, but it means a lot to the people you're doing it for when they go to be like, oh, I got to take the trash out. And they open up, they're like, oh, he did it. Like that's easiest bonus points you'll ever get in your life.
It's true.
But then we're back in the same room, usually quieter for a little while until we're certain she's asleep. But, and at that point, we do all sorts of things. I guess we watch shows and play games and
we record podcasts.
That's exactly. I mean, this is literally a standing plan night right now. We just pushed everything else aside.
Metagaming our podcast right now.
Right. Yeah, I like to preach from where I live. Stop it. But my description over the years that I've honed of what it's like to hang out with married friends is mostly having conversations while running errands. Like that's a lot of it. And that's kind of just what the bedtime routine is. And a lot of, pre-gaming for dinner is putting stuff on the table, clearing stuff away, like whatever that involves. And you just have your conversations while your hands are busy. And it's great, honestly. Grocery stores, getting gas, taking stuff to storage units. It's that kind of thing. It's life. And I would just say that like, if you're a married couple and you're worried about inviting your single friends into that because you think that they need to be entertained or something like that, don't assume that. Like invite them in to do life with you and see how they react. Probably they'll just fall in. It's a huge privilege for me to be invited in to just whatever you were going to do that night. I'm just there with you doing it. And I feel very loved by that. And yeah, every family has a different routine. So it's not always going to look like this even, depending on how many kids you have. Bedtime could be an hour-long to 2-hour-long ordeal compared to maybe we've honed it, down to like 20 minutes now.
Right.
But that's taken a long time.
Or maybe they're older and they don't go to bed till 9:30.
The kid's just there with you the whole time.
Or, maybe they're younger. I know everybody has their own, things that they do with kids. And so a lot of parents just choose to keep their kids up with them. And you really got to flex the muscle of being okay with just kids around and interruptions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Ryan, you were mentioning to me, we were talking about this not too long ago, about you wanted to make sure that nobody ever felt maligned for not being asked to hang out for after dinner. Because a lot of friends, you go to their houses and like they've had a full day, it's the weekday especially, putting the kid down is going to be a routine and they just might not have the bandwidth to hang out after that's over. So they have you over for dinner and then you're like, cool, we're putting the kid down, we'll see you later. If you hear me describing staying until after all of that and go, well, does that mean my friends don't like me as much because they're not asking me to stay until after that? That's not true at all. I think that's a various person thing. That's a various stage of life thing. And there are nights where you are like, I don't think we can hang out super long tonight. We're exhausted. We need to go to bed early. And that's totally fine. And I just leave earlier. So, yeah.
Right. And I think that really just ties into a whole thing where relationships where it's just two people are already difficult enough. And there's already a level of communication that's required for a relationship between two people. We're not talking about a relationship between three people, even more if there's children involved.
Right.
And so a little bit of communication can really go a long way. And so if we're talking about the bedtime rodeo and you as one of the married people giving a cue to that single person, just really explicitly like, hey, we're going to do this. It's going to be a while. Like you're welcome to sit and hang out.
Yeah.
Those two sentences can totally reset any sort of awkwardness or weirdness that's brewing. But then also that just straightforward and candid point of like, hey, tonight's not going to work.
Right.
We're totally at our wits' end.
It ain't it.
We will be a bad friend to you.
Yes.
If we keep trying to hang out, or
Right.
we're already exhausted. And again, your friendship can be made of more than just succeeding and getting to accomplish the things you intended to.
Oh, yeah.
It's living life together.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think that's a huge benefit to there being three of us, because there have been nights. I have a single parent friend who I'd go hang out with him, and we would try to like watch a movie or something after the kids went down. And there were nights where he would just straight up fall asleep. And I didn't have the heart to wake him. So I just, took a picture of his mug asleep for fun and sent it to him and then left. And that way he woke up, he saw what happened, and he was just like, oh, Kevin, he didn't disturb me. I'd put a blanket on him if there was one around,
Aw.
And so, but like when that happens with us, because there's been a couple of nights where Ryan's dozed off and we were talking or whatever. Like,
Very true.
me and Lauren just keep talking and it's fine. Or she
Well,
goes, it's time to go to bed.
I actually fallen asleep
I don't know
while
if
you
you've
guys have had a
actually fallen
conversation.
asleep.
But there are so many nights
Oh,
where
yeah.
you guys are watching the thing and I'm less interested in the thing and I'm on my computer
Absolutely.
doing whatever.
And we're not offended by that.
And making snide comments.
Maybe sometimes by that.
Well, sure. Yeah, or nights where I hit a wall and I go, okay, bedtime.
Yeah.
It's time
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
There's-
Lauren will actually announce that she hits the wall.
Yes.
I just fall asleep.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, I remember there was a night where like you just stood up. I was like standing up to get something, not at all expecting things to be over immediately. And you just stood up, gave me a hug, said, all right, see you later.
Me?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's time to be done. But yeah, and I appreciate that. And I, we were talking about even earlier tonight when we went to the storage unit, like it just happened to work out really well because you communicated as soon as I walked through the door, like, hey, I'm going to need some time by myself to kind of chill before we do the podcast.
Yeah.
And like you do that kind of stuff. So we know, and like it worked out. Me and Ryan had somewhere to be. So it just was perfect situation. You got your alone time. We ran an errand, but
And part of that's a personality thing.
For sure.
Anyone who knows me knows that I don't mince words.
Right.
And I just am very clear and concise and compassionate and complete. All those 4 C's of good communication.
That is a deep cut. If you know the 4 C's of communication,
Oh,
please write into the podcast.
yeah, reach out.
Whatever
because
form of communication.
we have more to
can
talk
happen.
about.
I won't know, but I'll pass it on to
If you
them.
know, you know.
If you know,
and
you know.
we're here to talk about it with you.
Well, let's zoom out less about kind of the individual things that we do and just talk bigger stuff because that's a lot of this too, just stuff that kind of applies everywhere. Why do you think it's important to have, as a married couple, to have single friends, just in general?
So for me, it is about diversification of your community. Cross age, cross cultural, cross racial, cross life stage, cross age friendships where you are learning from each other, gleaning things from each other. I have never been single in my 20s or 30s. I started dating Ryan at 16 years old, and he was my first boyfriend. So seeing you navigate that scary, scary world, my sympathy goes out, has been eye-opening. It has made me a better friend to those who are going through that. It sharpens us in ways that I think we can't imagine. It is so, so good for us as people to have relationships that cross barriers and to hold on to those friendships, even though they're not maybe the easiest logistically or the most comfortable for us. You know, it would probably be more comfortable for us to go to the zoo with another couple that has a kid and have that be a thing. This was work. This was objectively more work than a relationship like that. But the thing is, you learn things from each other that you just don't learn from people that are exactly like you. And we're talking about life stages here. And I find that my relationships with people who are in college or people who are empty nesters are some of the most fruitful and beneficial relationships to my overall just well-being and learning and edification as a human. It is exactly what we were designed to do. We were designed to cross these barriers.
Yeah. I think another huge thing is that we as humans do terrible in isolation. It doesn't go well when we get in on ourselves and navel gaze and just be caught up in our own stuff. And surprise, when you get married, you can do that as a couple. You can turn in on yourselves and become isolated, and it doesn't go well. And so having friends, and specifically single friends, and the reason that's different is because, again, kind of what Lauren was talking about, it prevents the echo chamber of what's going on. But there's also the inverse of flexibility and availability versus the structure and constraints, especially if you have a child. You don't have time, you don't have what's going on. But Kevin, you have the flexibility and the time to sort of meet us where we're at, where married people with children, scheduling stuff to do married people with children is still really, really hard. And so I think it just helps us get out of ourselves.
Yeah. Sam Albury, who you mentioned earlier, Kevin, tells a story about his friends who are married, who went through a really tough time. And he was able to pack up and put a toothbrush in a bag and go over there and be there for them.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have, someone to go back to. He didn't have those things kind of tying him down. So he was way more flexible, like you were saying, Ryan, to care for people that way. And it's a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah.
We look down on singleness a lot as a culture. And I'm not discounting that it is very difficult. I have lots of single friends, and even, talking to you, Kevin, it's hard to be single for sure, but there are also huge benefits. And one of those things is that you don't have strings attached, and you can really, really be there for people.
Well, like you said, you bring the strength of each form of relationship to that relationship. Like you bring the strengths of marriage to this relationship. I bring the strengths of singleness to this relationship, which is, there are a lot of those, but you have two incomes pooled. You can afford a house in the city somehow. And so you actually have a home to offer your friends. If something ever happened and my power went out and I needed a place to stay, you have a room for me,
That's
things
happened.
like that. Yeah. And so, there's a gajillion reasons, right? Because it's, like you said, the way we were made to function. But as a single person, hanging out with married people, one is, it's a very safe place to get to know the opposite gender. I'll say this a lot, but I wasn't super comfortable around girls in high school. They were kind of mythical creatures to me. And it took me a while to get over that and just realize
Yes, we are mythical creatures, Kevin.
And then in college, I saw
you.
them for what they are. No,
Like sirens.
right. Yes.
Sorry, that was
Put wax in your ears, tie yourself to the mast.
But it's
that is not what we think about women.
No, not at all.
We're not there.
Not at
all right,
all.
okay.
But no, it was a super, because you take all the sexual elements, for lack of a better term, out of it, and I'm legitimately just get to come in and be a friend in the safety of just being a friend in this relationship with the woman. And I can ask her questions about other women. Or there was a time that I got turned down by a girl, and I called Lauren and I was like, so here's what she said. Did I get turned down? Because it was really hard to tell. She goes, no, you got turned down. I was like, thank you. So that kind of stuff is very useful. But the other thing too is, and y'all kind of hit on this in your direction, but it is very healthy for me as someone who doesn't have those strings attached to actually put a few strings on myself every once in a while. Because when you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, a lot of times just in the safety of your own home with nobody there to adapt to, you get a lot less objective in life and a lot less graceful, I've found too, towards other people. And so by me coming into this house where there is a bedtime routine that has to happen at the same time, there are errands that y'all have to get done whether I'm here or not. I subject myself to your life and you let me. It's a privilege and a sacrifice. And I want to be married myself one day. It's the reason I watch you guys so closely, and all my friends on here that are married, I watch them very closely because I need to be healthily disillusioned to what it is. So I don't idolize it. But also when I get there, I don't freak out that it's not everything I thought it was going to be, because we're really good at doing that as single people,
right?
Especially when you're single for a long time. You're just like, oh, this is going to be so great when I've arrived. And then you arrive and you're like, what is this? Mm-hmm. So me watching just what life looks like for you guys and being there for that is very healthy for me, and it helps me think through things ahead of time. And I have to believe, with me being single at this point in my life, that the Lord wants me to at least learn something before I get married if I do. So that's kind of been my approach towards all of it. And that would only be possible if I had married people who would tolerate me in their house for long periods of time. So I've been very appreciative of that. So are there any pitfalls that you think that married people can I guess, fall into when relating to their single friends, like ways that you can make us feel single, I guess.
Totally. That can really otherize you. Yeah. I think we don't do a great job as the church and as society giving dignity to people in life stages that are solitary, not just singleness, but I'm thinking about the elderly, or the widowed, or the homeless, all of those kind of life stages that are one. I'm not sure why that is, but I have watched time and again married people use their single friends. Hey, it'd be so easy for you to babysit because you have all the time in the world, right? You don't have anything tying you down. You can come and watch the kids, or church programs, right? There's an event going on and they ask the single women to watch the kids. And it's like, well, you know, the single women would benefit from this event as well. They have minds and souls and hearts of their own that need to be cultivated. And time again, I've watched little comments here and there, and that's what it is. It's death by 1,000 cuts. You know, I don't think at least I haven't witnessed anything overt, and I'm sure that's out there. I'm sorry if someone has experienced that. But it is 1,000 tiny things that we say that prove that we're prejudiced against people. You know, maybe we think in our heads, oh, well, no one has hitched themselves with them, so there must be something wrong with them, which isn't true. I think a lot of married people are on a one man or woman mission to set their friends up to find them a soulmate. And newsflash, it's not the purpose of your life to find a soulmate, to get married. We're not guaranteed that. Even though, you know, Ryan and I think lots of our single friends are catches, absolute catches. It makes them feel like you are only their friend to get them to a wedding, and rushing people into weddings causes all sorts of other problems. So I think as a society, as a church, we don't do a great job of giving a true dignity to the single person, because being single is not a second class label.
Right.
Yeah.
One, you know, there's so much of that is just the result of a culture that values romantic love as the highest thing you can obtain. It's like you said, it's not the purpose of our life. Our life is not void of meaning if we never get history, if we're not even interested. I know some single people who are going to be single forever, and it's a choice.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's an easy or hard one. They seem to make it an easy one. So I'm like, good for you. That's great. I will never look down on that. I have so much respect for that. But yeah, it's just not true. I mean, you grow up with Disney, there's always a marriage at the end of it, and that's the end of the movie. And like, that does point to a marriage in the future by the Lamb and his church, but like, that's not a marriage in this life necessarily.
And to what you were saying earlier too, Kevin, it gives people a inaccurate representation of what marriage is.
Yes.
Oh, that's great that there was a wedding and then the film cut.
Happily ever after.
What do you do after the wedding? Marriage is work.
Yeah.
It is rewarding, but it is work.
Yep.
And that's part of, you know, when you come into our house and we live our lives around you, we're giving you an accurate picture of what marriage is.
Yes.
And it slows you down from wanting to pursue romantic love just for the end of the movie scene. And it also helps us see that friendship is a just as valuable form of love as romantic love is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, that's a good like encouragement for married people. Don't dress your life up when you have single friends over. It's one, it's not worth it. You can't keep it up forever. But two, like, you're not really doing them a favor, especially if they want to get married and they're not married. Like, show them what it's actually like. I mean, there's some conversations you probably shouldn't have in front of them, but like, I think a lot of people put more of a damper on that than they should. And y'all have always been really good at just being like, this is what our life looks like. Welcome, you know.
Welcome to the jungle.
Well, some nights. But you know, we talked about things that people can do wrong. But I think so much of what I'm pushing against in this podcast aren't the things that people have done wrong, but the things that make these types of friendships intimidating because you're afraid they'll do something wrong. And so you just don't try. I've seen a lot of that. I've had a family member who is like, I just don't even try to hang out with married people. And I'm like, why? That's like the majority of people. Like you miss half the human population as candidates for friends. Why would you do that to yourself? But I do want to talk about just some things you might worry about that maybe you wouldn't as much like in a couple friendship or whatever, or just things you worry about in all friendships when you're married. I don't know. But because I think if we can talk about these things and show that like, hey, this is cool to think about. You can think about it, you can head it off, you can have that conversation and then not think about it. Or, hey, that's probably not going to happen to you or whatever. Maybe we can kind of, I don't know, get rid of some excuses maybe for not doing that. So we hit it on earlier, and I'll maybe let y'all expound if you want to, but the purity issue is a big one. You're one of the friends in there is opposite gender of one of the other friends in there, and they're married. So trust is involved there. Ryan, you talked about how we built it a long time before y'all were married, which is the ideal way. You don't always get that time, but if you meet somebody and they are already married, you have to kind of build that trust within that relationship, and that can take a little more time. It can be a little harder sometimes, but that's something that I really want to alleviate from my married friend's mind, and it takes time of building trust. There's just no other way around it. You have to not say creepy things in front of their wife or to their wife. Like, imagine how hard that is. But like, yeah, you have to be careful about that kind of stuff. And if you ever offend somebody or do something that makes them uncomfortable, you should apologize for that and not do it again.
I would say that a huge part of the building the trust too is just communicating. Your yes is yes and your no is no, and just consistency and straightforwardness, and to ask questions, right? If you get the sense that something is off or something doesn't make sense or whatever, Kevin, I know you've done that. It's like, hey, was that okay? Or was that something that didn't work? And just asking that question, even if everything was totally fine, builds a lot of trust. If you just let all the awkward energy sort of sit and simmer and grow underneath the surface, you won't ever build trust. And eventually miscommunications and misunderstandings happen and it goes downhill.
Yeah, when you always have that if you don't resolve that, you always look back on that instance when trying to decide how much trust to give them in the future, whether you mean to or not. You're just like, well, they breached it that one time and it might not have been major, but like it's a strike against them. And sadly, I have a memory. So,
and I think this is another moment where we need to make space for people who may have a difficult time trusting for one reason or another. Maybe trust has been abused in some way in their past. And on the married side, that's something that you protect each other from.
Yeah.
So there just may be people that it's not ever a good idea for them to be brought into your home for one reason or another. They might make your spouse uncomfortable.
Yes. Please tell your spouse if they do.
And then listen to and believe them.
Yeah.
Right.
If that is something that they're saying to you. Or it may be something where if your standing plan night comes up and it's been, again, a really hard day or something like that, specifically for someone who's been through trauma or abuse, you can absolutely just opt out of that.
Yeah.
But that's part of open communication with your spouse too.
Yeah, it definitely protects against a lot of things that can happen or helps get over them, and they do. But yeah, I do want to hit, I always like to flip the coin, I guess, reasons that single people might be afraid to hang out with married people, because that happens too. And a lot of times the single people are the one who initiate those relationships, and they're the ones I hear refusing to do so because of whatever fears or whatever. And so a lot of them are the same. Like, we are afraid of being looked down on. It's not fun to have somebody treat you as less because they're married and you're not. You hit that. It's totally not right. Sometimes we have a chip on our shoulder and we misinterpret things to be that when they're not that, though. And that's something you got to look at yourself for. But purity issue, obviously, like some people, I mean, y'all grew up in purity culture in a way that I didn't even, but like some dudes are totally afraid to look at another girl at all unless they want to date them or whatever. And
I had a purity ring.
Oh boy.
I did side hugs.
I was a devil until I was 15.
Oh my goodness.
But I mean, it's a big one, but we kind of talked about, and we talk about some safeguards to kind of put in place for that, just so you don't have to worry about it as much. But one that I've thought about though is fear of being ganged up on. That's really very rarely happened with any of my married friends, but something that I have worried about in the past of like, what if I say something and both of them don't agree with me? Are they just going to dogpile me until I agree with them?
Oh, I see.
And so that's, I don't think, a very warranted fear. And also communication, all you have to do is be like, guys, I feel like I'm being dogpiled right now, and see how that goes. So I don't, yeah, but it is something that's crossed my mind. So we talked about what intimidates people. I don't want to just be like, you should communicate more and leave it at that. I do want to be a little more practical on some things. So people should be like, oh, this guy just thinks he has it all made. Like, here's some things we've actually done to not worry so much about a lot of this. In terms of the purity thing, trust is very important. And the way you kind of navigate that is really important. I was friends with Lauren first. We've talked about that. Ryan trusted me a lot to treat her with respect. And you've let us hang out together without you more than a lot of people might, which I've very much noticed and appreciated. And Lauren, you're comfortable. I've not so been a jerk that you don't want to hang out with me one-on-one every once in a while. It just looks different now than it used to, I think.
Yeah. A couple practical examples. We have a text chain between the three of us, not just the two of us.
Yes.
And there was one situation, I don't know if you remember, where you were calling me a nickname that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I talked to Ryan about it, and I was like, I don't like this. And Ryan goes,
just tell him.
yep. That's what Ryan said.
Yeah.
There might be other situations again where you would need to step in as protector, yada, yada. Right. This was not one of those
This was an
situations.
honest mistake of me trying to include her in a group that had asked me to call them this nickname. And I was already kind of like, is that okay?
Totally.
And she's just like, listen, I understand, but I'm married. That doesn't work with me. I was like, cool.
I was like,
great.
I feel weird, you know? And Kevin just said, all right, cool.
Awesome. I'm not hurting you every time I talk to you now. I feel so much better.
Yeah. So, you know, we do sometimes hang out alone together. It's not a lot.
Not as much anymore.
There's been times where we'll go out to get a treat from Walmart and bring it back or whatever. And those are just case by case trust issues. And they, again, will differ with every single person.
You mentioned the 3-way text conversation. That was, I think actually you asked us to initiate that. You're like, I would just feel better if we did this. It's just nothing you've done, but like I've got a lot of friends and I'm just trying to keep the boundaries the same for all of them. And I was like, oh, that's actually very smart. And so I worry sometimes about blowing Ryan's phone up when we're having a conversation during the day. So we just try not to do that too much. But it's a very practical tool and very useful as a single person, because I text you through that group chat to ask you guys everything about, like, you know, what's for dinner tonight. And rather than having to, you know, I text Ryan and he goes, well, I have to go find Lauren and talk about this now. A lot of times y'all are in the same room when you get that text message, you just talk about it. But like, if you're not, she sees the same message you do. She's thinking about it. So when you do get a chance to talk about it, or you can talk about it in the group chat in front of me and we can figure it out. So time wise, it's actually, I'm saving you guys a little bit of time by doing that. And also for me, it's making the answer come a lot faster, because two people are on it. Somebody's going to either be more free than the other person at that moment, or just be a better texter than the other person at that moment. And it really helps for that to happen. So,
which is a huge help for me because I am the bad texter.
Well, yeah, y'all are just both very busy. So it doubles my chances of reaching one of you when you don't happen to be super busy. So but like you said, the accountability of that is really great, because, you know, there are a few exceptions, but not as many these days. You know, generally, I think the biggest exception was we tried to plan a surprise party for Ryan. So we had to talk outside of that group chat. And that was one of the most stressful nights of my life, because I was in charge of getting everyone here. Yes. Well, Ryan is also very hard to surprise and looks for those clues. But we got him. And I think as soon as I found out he was genuinely surprised, I just collapsed into a chair and didn't talk the rest of the night. But yeah, that would be a, you know, example of that. But yeah, other than conversations like that, everything I say to Lauren over the phone, where it's easier to hide things, is right in front of Ryan. There's a paper trail that he also can see. And so that takes a lot of me worrying about coming across wrong with that, I guess. But yeah, all that to say the word over and over again, but communication is just so important. Everybody has their own boundaries. It's different with every person, every relationship, and they're always moving, because life throws things at you. And then you're just like, well, I got to guard against that now. Or, oh, you know, that's not that big a deal. I'm not so worried about that anymore, or whatever. Just staying open about that is good. And I'm at the point in my life where I'm just so done with passive aggressive, right? Like if there's something wrong, I really want to know about it. It'll stink, but we'll come out a lot stronger. I mean, every conversation we've had like that, we've been better friends afterwards, because there's more trust built by airing actual grievances that are warranted or unwarranted and talking about them.
Right. Yeah. And just cutting off passive aggression in general is a huge thing that changes the game. And it really, really does help.
Absolutely. Well, at the end of every episode, I want to give every couple that comes on here a chance to kind of just share something about their marriage. Because again, I'm watching your guys' marriage, and I assume that some of the single people who listen to this also desire to be married. And I just want to give them the same wisdom that I've experienced from watching your marriage, if you have anything to offer. But generally, the way I'll frame it is there anything in your marriage that you're particularly proud of that maybe was hard fought? Or something that just you very much appreciate about your individual marriage, just the way you guys work together?
I would say there's many things that I think the Lord has just set on us, but a really practical thing that we've started doing that has made an incredible difference is, for us, it's every 3 months, and it could be different for different people, but every 3 months we go on a retreat. And for us, it's important that it is out of town. We need the drive to kind of get us away. And the two of us go, and we have some sort of agenda where we get out of town on Friday evening, we hang out, we watch something, we do our stuff, and then we buy food, we bring it with us. And the day of Saturday is us just checking in on each other and our marriage. And we walk through that. And I stole this idea shamelessly from a book by Ray Ortlund Sr., where he talked about doing it. And as a pastor, he did it once a month with his wife. For us, it was every 3 months. We experimented with different times. And we didn't realize how helpful it really was to do that.
Yeah, y'all rave about those.
Until we missed one.
Oh.
And then we were like, oh, that's bad. Let's not do that again. And then some time went on. And then we missed another one, and it was worse than the other one we had missed.
I think
and
I
it was
remember
like,
that, yeah.
So just that introspection time for one another and the intentional effort that it takes. And, sometimes it's all finances, and sometimes it's almost no finances. And we're talking about other things. We're forgiving one another for what's going on. We're reworking schedules. It's a mix between pragmatic, but also just relational work.
Yeah, I love me retreat.
Just standing plan for married people.
That's true.
Yeah.
The thing that has always, I think, marked you and I's relationship that I have loved is the communication aspect. Again, we were long distance for 5 years, and you can only talk. So it started our relationship. It has continued our relationship. It is one of the things that we love doing the most, is just sitting and talking. It can be about everything or nothing or each other or movies or whatever. It has been such a joy to sit and talk. And sometimes that means that we say no to other things that we might want to do, like friends or house projects. Things don't get cleaned all the time. And once we kind of slow down and realize that we love doing that, at the end of a really good, talk, just chat, we're always going, man, we just need to do this more. I think that's a huge benefit of our marriage. I think that has helped our communication. Part of that's a personality thing. You and I love to talk, period. But it is also, again, a muscle that I think needs to be flexed. I learn so much more about you and love so much more about you when I just sit and talk and listen. So that's 13 years going strong.
Yeah.
Of talking. Lots of talking.
Lots of talking.
Yeah. Well, and, just to hit on that, just the things that I've gleaned from your marriage from watching you. So you get to sit in the honor seat and squirm for a little while. I've noticed that too. Like that comes across in how you talk to each other when I'm here. There's a respect, and there's I've even seen at times you come in and say something about yourself and Ryan be like, no, that is not true. You stop that. And like literally defends you against yourself. Like there's just a level of respect and truth in your conversations that I very much admire and strive to emulate while I'm here, but don't always do it so well. And another thing that I really admire about you guys is that you do enjoy each other's interests, like you try to anyway, and on a lot of things, but you also give each other space to do things with your personal time and your hobbies. And it was something that like, I think y'all had to kind of not have that space for a while to realize, oh, we need that space. But I just remember like a year or two ago when you're like, oh, I've given Monday nights or Ryan's night to do woodwork or his night to go out and have a beer with his friends or whatever it is. And I was just like, wow, that's so kind that like, and you had things you did, but a lot of times you're just like, I like the night by myself anyway, it's fine. But seeing you be very intentional about like, I want to give you this night for you to go do something that like builds you up or makes you feel more fulfilled. I can't be all that to you. Please have these things as well. That intentionality really stood out to me. I've thought about that a lot with some of my friends. I'm like, do you ever thought about just taking a night to yourself every once in a while? And I think it would help your marriage a lot. And I mean, I have to do that to myself every once in a while. I just go, and then I'm like, well, I should probably actually go home and write music at some point, or maybe that's why I'm so angry right now. I don't know. I haven't had any creative output all week because I keep running around. But anyway, you give permission for that, and that's really cool. But yeah, I really do appreciate you guys. I mean, it's, we've been at this for a while now. It was already late. You were both already very tired, and you sat down and did this with me, and it means a lot. We are going to have another episode together at some point because you were the first couple in my life to have a kid that I saw a lot. And the actual idea for this podcast came from a conversation we had before and after you had kiddo. And you were like, man, I wonder how our friendship is going to change after this. And then, fast forward 3 or 4 months and we're sitting on the couch, she's asleep in the other room, and you go, remember when we thought this was going to change our friendship? And I was just like, it doesn't have to. People are so afraid of this. And so I really do want to lean in on that in detail in another episode. And I think that's really important. And it was really encouraging to me. And so I really hope it encourages other people.
Yeah, I agree.
Stay tuned for the secrets of how your life cannot change after you have a child.
Oh my gosh.
Just kidding. It does change.
Yes. It keeps our friendship spicy. So.
Spicy.
Anyway, thanks for coming on, guys.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Glad to
We
be
love
here.
you, Kevin. Thank you.
guys. Next time on the podcast,
there's such an importance to have love and respect for the person that your friend is falling in love with.
I talk with my friends Chase and Paige about creative ways to include your long-distance partner in your friendships.
I was able to meet a lot of people before I even moved. So it didn't even feel like I was moving to a place where I didn't know anybody.
And how common interests can expedite getting to know your friend's spouse.
It was putting myself in the position to be the outsider on something that the two of you had in common.
This podcast is made by humans. We get things wrong. We have blind spots. So we want to hear from you. What are your experiences? Is there something we missed that you'd like to hear about? I'm working on some bonus episodes to fill in the gaps and really want your feedback. So please email the show at professionalthirdwheelpodcast@gmail.com. Or even better, leave a voice message by calling 615-953-0360. Join us ordinary people in helping other ordinary people. The show is edited and produced by me, Kevin Morris. Music by The Universal Donor. Logo by Kyle Patterson. We're a part of the Honest Edge Media Network. Check us out at honestedgemedia.com. And because I'm so bad at self-promotion, please help me out by sharing, or maybe leave a review, preferably 5 stars. This really helps the show be found by others who might benefit from it. You'll find new episodes in your feed on the 3rd and the 13th of each month. So until next time. Oh, hey, you're still here. I thought it might be kind of fun to leave a little something after the credits for those of you who like to stick around. Hey, so random question. Have you ever seen these memes about third wheeling? You should really look them up if you haven't. It's always something like some poor third wheel awkwardly sitting on a couch trying to watch a movie while his couple friends make out next to him. I know it's a joke, but there's always some truth in the humor. And that really is a fear that people have with these kinds of relationships. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast. Don't get me wrong, I love these memes. I will definitely be posting some of the more positive ones on Instagram. So come on over and send me yours. Tag the show and I'll repost some of them. All right, see you later.